evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. The meetings are on Milford TV, and they are live, as well as available on the recording. With that, I'll open the meeting and take a motion on the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was October 17th of 23. You guys are going to have to do a lot today. We don't have any extra members, so there's not much choice in these things.
Exactly. I'll make a motion to approve
Motion
the
by-
October 17th meeting.
Motion by Chris to accept the meeting minutes.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous at 3. We have 181P plan for 15 Draper Park. John S. Gomes.
You may recall this several months ago, had been to the ZBA for a variance. So this is endorsable as submitted.
Are there any questions from the board? I did take a look at it in the package. Hearing no questions, do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept.
Motion to have Larry sign the 81P. Second, Joe?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Joe. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of having Larry sign the 81P will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous at 3. Continued amended site plan, 146 South Main Street, New York Capital Investment Group, LLC. We have a letter in our packet. On behalf of the applicant, we kindly request to continue our planning board public hearing scheduled for 11/21/23 to the next available. The reason for the request is to prepare traffic study prior to our meeting with the planning board. I just hope they are able to actually get it done for the next meeting, considering they chances are whoever they have working on it's going to lose the rest of this week. But I guess we'll just see another letter if that's the case.
Yep. Do it to the 12th, 12/12?
Yeah, I guess we'll, what's the, with the schedule, you have that much, that any issue with that?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Do I have a motion to move the continuance to 12/12/23?
I'll make a motion. to
Motion
move
by
it.
Joe. Seconded by Chris. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of continuing the hearing to 12/12/23 will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous at 3. Continued amended site plan 206 East Main Street, Powell Meat Market.
John's here.
You came for the car wash last time, right? Which 146? Yeah, for continuation.
The 12th of next month.
12/12.
12/12. Call our office and find out if it'll be continued again, because there's a possibility that it would be continued.
His traffic guy still hasn't got the thing done, so.
Thank you all.
All right. Take it, John, quick, before something else happens.
Good evening, for the record, John Federico, Interior in Helmond. Last week when we were from the board, we had a couple of comments regarding the parking stall striping for the 4 stalls in the front over here, a couple of dumpster screenings, and I think it was some comments that Liz had about some additional items that were located in the back of the fire lane. I didn't have anything as built just yet, so everything currently is still being called out proposed in this plan. But Moshe did already and forward over some photos to me of the restriping. He did put in the 2 parallel to bring that total up to 7 as previously approved. And we did have our parking calcs reflected to match the total amount of stalls we have, which is 89. Our current requirement's going to be 87 based on our breakdown. We did take a couple of extra seats from the hair salon, or sorry, nail salon, excuse me. But then also, Moshe did add in the additional dumpster pad. I believe that was sized for 2 dumpsters. He added screening on the David's either grease trap or dumpster in the upper corner over here. And then after talking with the Army recruiting office, they did actually put screening around that dumpster, but did leave it up in this area over here. Our plan was calling it out as to be relocated. I guess that was something that they did eventually decide ultimately to keep it there. But also, Moshe did go in, spoke to all the tenants to remind them about parking within the fire aisle, anything back in that fire aisle, and then has installed several spots along that back area, fire lane, no parking signage. So I believe at this time, everything has been addressed. We did have pavement detail as requested by Liz, our dumpster detail added on there as well. And then I don't believe there was anything else that the board had comments on.
Any questions from?
If anybody would like to see any photos, unfortunately I didn't print them out, but I do have them on my phone. I'm more than happy to come in and show them.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I am with this and with almost any of them is, I mean, proposed, not proposed, for me, I'm getting to the point of, and this is already there, but we need to follow up, is that, you know, prior to occupancy permit, we need to make sure that the site is reflective of the approved plan. And so we need to, I know this is always difficult.
John's been,
he?
yeah, he's been letting me know before he,
Okay.
and having me go out, like, he just had me, even the car charging stations at Target, he had me check those out the other day, so.
Okay. Yeah, so
I think we're working a little bit better on that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that, you know, because even between now and when you may do it, people may change things. I at least want to be able to say that when we gave the occupancy permit, it matched the site plan. So my only recommendation to the board is that we emphasize that in the approval.
Okay.
But other than that, I didn't have any other comments.
Well, with this particular site, you may want to request an as-built after a certain point.
Well, we're supposed to have an as-built of them.
Yes, I know.
I mean, that's in the regulations as is now, too. With this particular site, considering when they went out and did the survey, if Liz went out and looked at the site versus the site plan, you know, we're talking about things that easily show up on a drawing. You know, is the dumpster pad there, is the striping there? Grading didn't change, so we didn't go through any of that. So I'm not worried about final grading or things like that. So in this particular case, I'm actually less worried about an as-built than to make sure that, in fact, the site plan that we see in front of us now is actually what's out there on the day they get an occupancy plan. But going forward, Larry, certainly for those where there are grading and stuff, I definitely will be trying to emphasize the fact that we do want that as-built. It's stamped prior to occupancy.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, just a question. Obviously, there's 8 units. Units 6 and 7 are shared, so it's 7 units. There's 1 dumpster up on the north side, and then looks like in the concrete pad we'll have 4 more. I guess my question is that going to be enough dumpsters based on the number of occupants that are there?
Yes, that was something we discussed at the last meeting. They have gone through, for instance, like a nail salon's not using a full dumpster in that case. So any units that can share, say nail salon and hair salon, that's already been addressed. And then that pad was expanded for the meat markets dumpster, as well as to be able to accommodate anything else or provide a little extra space back there for it. None of the screening or anything has been changed. It was just pulled back within a little bit of that pavement area or landscaped area right next to that pavement. Nothing was impacted on the drive aisle side or anything like that. But if we need that as any sort of as-built condition, if we could have that as like a special condition to anything, I'm more than happy to provide an as-built plan at any date that you guys specify.
Yeah, well, as I said, I mean, it is actually required by bylaw, but
Yeah, that's, I mean, the dumpsters in particular are something that I'm going to check before.
Right, and we didn't see more than
it wasn't.
5 out there? or-
No,
or that
there was,
area?
they
I know
they had,
pictures showed them individually, kind of.
I
back
think they
there.
only had one that was not on the dumpster pad.
There was one that was located right here, kind of perpendicular from
Yeah.
where we have the sewer manhole, and then there was another one that was kitty-cornered up in that corner. Based on the discussion that we had at the meeting, Liz was okay with the location, but did ask to have that, possibly cleaned up or anything.
So
And then-
they made it big, and they increased the size of it big enough to put dumpster on there that wasn't on a pad, and also to put one for the meat market. So I think they should be fine.
The one that they moved up on the pad has the appropriate.
That'll
fencing.
have, I don't know if it does now, but
I was told by Moshe that this one up here does have appropriate fencing and everything for it. These ones here did have tree screening, and it was behind the buildings, not seeable from the road or anything. We didn't specify to have those extra screening or anything else there.
Maybe, Joe?
No, I don't.
A motion.
Just want to make sure, so it's.
Yep.
We're just looking to look for.
Approve the
approval of
amended
the
site
amended
plan.
site
As
plan.
amended,
Sure, so-
yep.
Yeah, so I'll like the motion to approve the amended site plan.
Is that with the town engineer, the prior to occupancy permit, town engineer goes out to ensure that the site meets what's shown on the site plan?
Correct, yes.
Do I have a second to that? Seconded by Joe. Chris made the motion, Larry, Joe made the second. Any further discussion? Hearing not, all those in favor of approving the amended site plan will signify by saying aye.
Aye?
Opposed? That's unanimous at 3.
Great, thank you so much, I do appreciate it.
Amended site plan for 13 Spruce Street. Andre Resende.
I would skip over that, go to the next one. He's trying to get here
Okay,
by now, but he hasn't gotten there yet.
all right.
It's all right.
Amended site plan for 110 South Main Street, Shazam LLC and National Grid. Sure.
First time I've been to one of these, so I don't really know what to do.
In that case, what I think I'll do is I will read staff's letters into the record, which will also give us an idea of what the applicant is proposing. The applicant requests amended site plan approval to add 4 electric vehicle charging stations on the subject property. Zoning bylaw currently makes no provisions for electric vehicle charging stations and also permits no other use of required off-street parking spaces other than for actual customer and/or employee parking. However, a closer review of the actual floor area and seating requirements indicates that there are 4 more parking spaces that are actually necessary to meet the minimum parking requirements. For those members that aren't seeing how they probably don't know where 110 South Main is. This is the Pins parking lot and the associated parking in front of that between the corner of South Main and Depot. The proposed charging stations are to be located at the southerly corner of the existing parking lot. This is from Larry, and he recommends approval of the amended site plan subject to all relevant department comments. There we go. Letter from Liz. Following comments were prepared from my review of the following documents: amended site plan, electric charging station plan for Pins. Without any zoning regulations on electric charging stations, my personal opinion is the spaces selected for the electrical charging stations would have the least impact on the available parking. I would, however, recommend a detail of the signs to be posted clearly indicating the spots are not limited to electrical vehicles. I guess that isn't true in effect, right, Liz?
Well,
If the parking-
now it's, because it's extra
Larry's
floor
right.
spaces, right?
Yep,
When I
okay.
first looked at it, it was.
Yep. Water department sees no conflicts, fire department, no recommendations. Highway department, trench permit must be obtained. I'm not sure if you, well, you may have to, depending on what you have for electrical out there. I don't know if you have to go out into the road at all for electrical.
No, National Grid's gonna run
Gonna
off
from
one of
the
the poles
poles?
there, and they're gonna put in a pad transformer.
Okay.
But you will obviously get all the trenching permits, et cetera.
And that's it for agency comments. As Larry indicated, the 4 spaces are along the South Main Street side, right at the end of the landscaped area that's at the corner of South Main and Depot.
Right. It's on the other side of the brook,
Yes, on the far side from Pins.
so there's not a,
Yeah, there's not much
Parking
use
lot.
of that parking lot.
right.
We can see that from the aerial. Any questions, comments from the board?
Just wondering on the, where the location is and then how they're kind of adjacent on the corner, any type of protection that we feel that might be needed from there from the road. Obviously, there's a sidewalk, but
Yeah, they're going to protect their transformer more than we have to worry about. I would say maybe if you guys wanted screening, from,
I don't think any.
I don't think
was
they
just
need
more-
screening for that.
I was looking more from the protection of if a car were to leave the roadway, is there any type of concerns from that standpoint?
Yeah,
You know,
we
could it
generally-
Being electrical charging stations, no different than a telephone pole, I guess, but,
Well, the units themselves are gonna have bollards around them, so the transformer itself is gonna be on sort of the mulch area towards the point. And we're gonna trench around and we're gonna do those first 4 spots, and we'll have bollards all around each side.
Okay.
Because, if a car hits it, it's $100,000 per unit, so.
right, they care about it more than we need to.
Yeah. We're happy to have those signs in, there's no state regulations for
Yeah,
if
that's-
they have to be EV or not, so
You
we're
don't-
happy to.
Well, you don't need them, so there's no,
Yeah,
there's
you
no,
don't. But, yeah, because they changed the,
Okay, yeah, either way is fine.
so you could have them as only for EV charging and not have to say they're open to everybody, so there's, most of the time parking down there is not an issue. I think other than when Vince Wolfork used to have his, and, a few other times that I've seen the whole parking lot may be full, so, yeah. So I don't think taking up the 4 spots is that much of an issue.
I guess, yeah, my only other question too is obviously the proximity to your building. It's a little bit far, it's further away. Can't tell you that they need to be closer, but obviously if you could put anything closer, it would be beneficial to
Well,
your customer base.
one of the main reasons was, that's the only viable pole. There's a pole right across South Main. So we're gonna string another pole across the street, they're gonna run a wire across it, but that's the only pole that doesn't have, because the substation's there too. So that's the only pole in the area that does not have a trash can transformer on it already, or the other poles that exist are already overloaded and we can't pull power off of them. So it's sort of ideal because that is kind of like an out of the way and spot, which, I guess you could look at it either directions. You either want it close or you want it far away. So mathematically, or not mathematically, but strategically, that was the only way the National Grid could get the pad transformer onto that side of the road.
Anything else? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Motion to approve the amended site plan for 110 South Main Street by Joe.
Second?
Second by Chris. Any further discussion? Hearing not, all those in favor of approving the amended site plan will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous at 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Amended site plan for 39 Green Street, Golden Nozzle Car Wash. Good evening, Mr. Pettinari.
How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you.
It may, facilitate things to just read in my report.
Okay, then we'll do that. I'll just read in agency comments, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant for any further information that they would like to add. The applicant requests amended site plan approval to allow for the continued use of a commercial car wash at the subject premises. Again, this is Golden Nozzle, at the corner of Green Street and 140. At their 9/14/23 meeting, the ZBA granted a temporary special permit with conditions to the new operator. That decision is attached to our packet. The applicant now seeks to remedy all past violations by meeting the temporary special permit requirements and by revising the site plan features to return the queuing lanes to an appropriate safe configuration. The original approved queuing lanes are being restored. 8 vacuum stations are being relocated to the rear of the building, and a substantial area of excess paving at the rear of the site is to be removed and replaced with landscaping. In addition, 2 traffic control gates are being installed at the head of the car wash queuing lanes, and 2 speed bumps are being installed near the southwest corner of the building to slow traffic exiting the vacuum stations. Larry recommends approval to the amended site plan, subject to other agency comments. And I don't know if we have any of the ZBA decision is attached. Water company sees no conflicts. The highway department finds it satisfactory.
And fire had, fire letter was in there right after the decision.
Oh, did I miss
It
that
was
one?
okay.
Why things
Did
sticky?
not come through.
I don't know. Wait a minute, let me see.
It was
My hands are
favorable.
getting too stiff.
It's stuck on mine too, so
Oh, there we go, there it is.
I missed it.
Yeah, fire department that has no recommendations. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Well, all I can say is, everything Larry said is what we want to say. We were before the zoning board seeking to get the existing special permit on that property extended for the benefit of Golden Nozzle. Tonight with me is Ryan Roberts, the regional director, and the corporate vice presidents from Golden Nozzle is Richard Smith. When we went to the zoning board, there was a lot of consternation about how this site had been used for a car wash since 1984, and that the applicant needed to come in and get the the special permit amended. But in the interim, things had happened on the site which had rendered the enforcement of the site plan, as it had been approved, it became a problem because it was no longer accurate and fair. We all talked, they amended the site plan, John did a super job on that. We worked with Larry. We present to you tonight the site plan that we hope you will approve, because that will be the basis for us to go back to the zoning board next month and tie up the special permit for a permanent special permit. That's really the whole story, and if you have questions, we can answer them, but there's really not much more to it than that.
Questions, comments from the board?
No, I mean, it's nice to get the feedback from the ZBA. Obviously, they've gone through and putting in those stipulations in. I believe, recalling from the ZBA meeting, the vacuum infrastructure is located inside of the facility to help reduce noise.
It will be, correct.
The back motor, yes.
Yeah, they said, yeah, so the infrastructure, so outside is just basically the cleaning nozzles.
Yes.
You could say, so that, and with the hopes, or with, not with the hopes, with
Yeah, we'll-
reducing that vacuum noise.
That's the word.
That, yeah.
Reducing or abating.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
And the only other thing I know, and it was brought up in there, is just, going from the 2 queuing lanes and making that 180-degree turn in, some of the larger vehicles that are going to be within town, and just whether or not they would be able to make that turn, successfully, basically, on that. And, it's a tight space. They just know that they might be kind of back and forth to make that in. And I'm not sure if there's any way of
So I can answer that?
easing that.
I can answer that. We operate 55 car washes, and we have quite a few that are going to be a tighter turn than that. But if you've got a long truck, no matter what car wash, you got to do a 3-point turn. You're going to pull in, back out, and go in that way. So to answer your question, there'll be a few vehicles, very few, that will have to do that.
Right, yeah. Not everybody's driving the Toyota Corolla, so.
Exactly.
Or your
Yeah.
Mini Cooper.
Yeah, exactly. So, that was, again, it's not, to me, it's not a deal breaker, but it's just something of concern.
But one of the things, Chris, that they have done, and it was mentioned, but it doesn't pop out, there are going to be control arms here at the head end of the queue lanes that prevent vehicles from getting in, or getting beyond that to enter the car wash until the car wash itself is ready to accept another vehicle to get into the wash cycle. So that area north of the building and north of the end of the queue lanes won't have vehicles in it until the wash cycle is ready to take.
So it'll allow them to pull out kind
Yes.
of into that.
Right, in case they have to make a three-point turn or something, they could still do it. And the other benefit of that is, in case an emergency vehicle has to go through there, you're not going to have cars queued up between the end of the queue aisle and the entrance of the building. So that'll all be open, so it should function much better, even though it's tight.
Right.
You won't have the problems.
And the relocation of the vacuums also gives you a more efficient use of the queuing lane.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you can actually
Before, with
be
the-
in the queue lanes.
Right, yeah, where the old one was, it just, it was, on a popular car wash day, it
Right.
was a popular place, so understandable on that. Further questions?
In terms of the process, Joe, the ZBA, if this were just coming through as a ZBA case, you'd be reviewing it. But it already came through as
Right.
a ZBA case, and you did the referral. So for all intents and purposes, whatever you approve now on this plan will get incorporated when they finalize the full special permit. And then basically, I don't know if they're going to amend it or rescind it, the temporary one.
Right.
I think they'll rescind it. What they wanted to do, what the zoning board wanted to do, they wanted to get some harmony between the planning board and the zoning board on the site. And so they recognize that to some degree, these are two independent processes that are moving. But what the zoning board expects from us is to talk to you, get hopefully an approval from you, and then go back to them. And before, or unless we get that, they won't entertain the new.
Right.
So we'll be approving the amended site plan, is what,
Tonight.
And that will be the basis for us to go to the zoning
Yeah.
board, correct?
Yeah. Anything else? Motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended site plan.
Motion by Joe to approve the amended site plan. Second? Second. Any further discussion? Hearing not, all those in favor of approving the amended site plan will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous at 3.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Ed Andre back there?
You still work there?
Sure.
No, this one, going back to this one. Amended site plan for 13 Spruce Street.
Yeah, whatever.
Very
Yeah, I'll take them both.
Zendi. So I'll read Larry's letter and staff comments, and then I'll turn it over to the applicant if he has any further. The applicant requests amended site plan approval for a change of use on the subject premises. The site had last been used as a contractor showroom and training center. Prior to that, it had been an auto service and repair shop. This is the old Rosenfeld Tire, for those that don't know the number. Specifically, this change of use is to locate a convenience store and meat market in the building. In addition to the new use, the parking area is being improved. An easement has been recorded over the parking area located on the adjacent Lot 557 for it to be used as part of Lot 556, the subject premises. This will restore the integrated parking arrangement of the original parking lot. The existing bollards will also be removed. There are no additions proposed to the building, and all openings at the rear, north end of the building are to be closed. The on-site parking lot will provide a total of 16 parking spaces, including 2 handicapped access spaces. This will satisfy the parking required for the approximately 3,200 square foot of floor area accessible to the general public inside the remodeled building. The southeasterly quadrant of the parking area is to be regraded to comply with ADA slope limitations, along with the accessible route to the new main entrance centered on the south Spruce Street facade of the building. Approximately 65 feet of the northerly curb line of Spruce Street is being restored along the front of the building between the fire department driveway on the east to the existing parking lot entrance immediately west of the building. In addition, a screened dumpster is provided in the parking lot area with 10-foot wide landscape buffer is proposed between Spruce Street sidewalk and the newly configured parking area. Larry recommends approval, subject to relevant department comments and subject to the north driveway being utilized as an emergency exit only. Liz had a number of comments. Are we still in this situation, Liz?
I haven't seen the new plans.
Then I would read, even if there is a new plan, let's read your comments originally, and then, because I'm not sure that, you know, if you haven't gone through them, there are comments here that certainly need to be addressed on, as part of the approval, I believe. The grade within the proposed accessible spaces ranges from 3 to 5%, exceeding the maximum 2% slope in ADA Regulation 512 CMR 23.4.3. The apparent accessible route from the accessible spaces to the storefront exceeds the maximum 2% cross slope. The proposed access aisle for the parking space is approximately 34 feet wide, which exceeds the minimum 24-foot width. The spaces along Spruce Street should be moved into the site approximately 10 feet to provide a landscape area and/or area for snow storage. Proposed screening is required between the parking lot and the residential units at 12 to 14 Prentice Ave. The plan shall indicate if the existing sign is to remain, removed, or replaced. Floor plan should be provided with a calculation for the required number of parking spaces. A detail of the proposed dumpster and screening fence shall be provided. The plan shall include any existing and proposed exterior lighting on the building. The detail for the proposed sewer manhole in Spruce Street indicates a 5-foot diameter structure is required. However, the proposed area to be saw cut is only 4 feet in width. The proposed saw cut area for the manhole needs to be adjusted. Approximate location of the existing gas service will need to be abandoned at the gas main. The plan should reflect the additional work in Spruce Street. Utility work proposed in Spruce Street will likely make the road inaccessible at different periods of time. A traffic plan should be provided with fire department coordination due to the abutting fire station. Sewer profile is inaccurate. Some grid elevations are labeled at 1-foot intervals and others at 2-foot intervals. The vertical location of the water, sewer, and gas utilities must be adjusted to reflect the correct grid scale. Encasement of the sewer service within 10 feet of the water main crossing may be required. Existing water services are depicted differently on the proposed parking plan and the proposed grease trap plan. Coordination with the water department to determine service locations. Highway department. The curbing being used to close the entrance ramp on Spruce Street must be 6-inch vertical granite. The throat stone must be placed at the catch basin. The catch basin frame must be changed to a 3-flange with Mass DOT specifications. The last piece of granite at the fire station driveway must dive down into the opposite side of the driveway. The curb conduit does not need to be installed. When pouring concrete in front of the new curbing, there must be a space for 2 to 3 inches of bituminous concrete over the concrete. Sidewalk behind the new curbing must be replaced with full panels within the town right-of-way. Concrete patching is not allowed. All road opening permits must be obtained from the highway department. Fire department, the driveway access between 13 Spruce Street and the fire station is town property. Past businesses use the driveway to access the garage for deliveries, but this alley always remained open for fire department use. The building renovations may require the installation of fire protection systems, including automatic sprinklers. Water department sees no conflict. Water Sewer Commissioners, at their meeting of October 17, 2023, the Board of Sewer Commissioners unanimously voted to approve the amended site plan for 13 Spruce Street. And that was an earlier meeting we have on the 29th. Board of Health does not have any issues. That's all of the agency comments. So if there's anything the applicant would like to add?
I think we sent over updated plans, so everything should be good to go from that checklist. We changed from 5% to 2% because we're ripping off of the whole asphalt. So that was regraded. That will be regraded eventually. But other than that, pretty clear.
So proposed, just the ones that I see that I'm not sure about, proposed screening between the parking lot and the residential use. I don't know if that's something that the board wants to see, but I don't see that on the revised plan.
Well, they were just doing the vinyl fence. That's part of the problem I had with the way Elliott does the colored plan, is that it shows up gray. So there's a fence up
so
on
there is?
the upper
There's a stone
side.
wall there, and then so on the upper section, there's going to be at least a 4-foot, right, to accommodate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to track on the plans as well,
We're trying to
Liz.
make it clearer.
And
Well,
it's
really
I
more
can only see
from-
the first 7 of
Yeah,
your
from my-
comments.
Yeah, for the first 7 seem all right, but then
After
lighting,
that,
yeah.
And then the sign as well, the sign is going to be existing frame, just a new sign.
Just
when
going to
that
put a
comes-
new sign on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is my opinion, I'm certainly not the board's at this point, but I think we need to allow, with the amount of comments that were there, especially as they get into grading issues with ADA, I'd like to make sure that you've had a chance to actually look at them and go through them, as opposed to, no shake on you saying they've been done, but I think we need to have staff make sure that they review that. I don't know if there's issues outside of those comments that the board would like to bring up as part of their review and comments.
Yes, yeah, one question. Chair. Liz, yeah, you had mentioned number 8, the proposed exterior lighting. I guess, is there anything you think that is needed in the parking lot area?
Well, that's,
Yeah.
So, kind of chip in. So we have full sets of plans, electrical, mechanical, that wasn't sent over. We have a full electrical plan as well, because it was only requested architecturals. So we have those full set of plans that we can send over to you, and it has everything you need.
well,
in there.
typically, the planning board isn't going to want to look at a set of electrical plans
Yeah, we
to
just-
see where the lights
Right.
on the outside of the
Structure,
building.
yeah, whatever the lighting structure you has, and to make sure that it's, that we don't have stuff that's pointing in someone else's house, especially as you get a residential next door and things like that. I mean, that's the level that
You
we're
just want to
looking
know
at.
the lights that are going to be used.
we
the
want to
lights.
know what
Where they
kind
are,
of lights.
where they are and what kind of lights.
where they are.
Typically,
where
that would
they're
show on the site
proposed.
plan. So you wouldn't need to submit the electrical plans that you submit to the building department to get an electrical permit. You need to submit a site plan that has everything on it.
Yep.
And I don't see
I mean, you may
any of your
be-
engineers here tonight, so.
You may be tying those off the building too, so, if they're on the building, then we need to see that, because you could light most of that parking lot probably with a light on the building and shining it out, which you wouldn't, you have enough room to be able to coordinate that lighting, so it could easily be done.
I'll mention in Babe's absence that you may want to look at running conduit over for electrical charging stations, not necessarily need it, but since you're going to
Well, I
be
don't-
tearing up,
I don't, to be honest, I know Babe mentions that, but to me, on this site, with the fact that there's very little excess parking, and the fact that it's a usage where you're talking about 10 minutes.
I hope, yeah.
I don't want somebody staying here charging when
yep.
they're doing that. So I would actually be voting against that. if you
All
did
right
that.
then.
He's going to have enough problems with people in the neighborhood parking on his lot,
Yeah.
taking up his customer
There's
spaces.
a church right across the street.
Right.
Always
Yeah.
works there too, so.
As a matter of fact, you may want to indicate on your plan when you submit it that you're going to put up signage that indicates for use of this business only, and we can see where that sign is, where those signs go, because I wouldn't doubt that that's a bad idea. The other thing, knowing the site to a certain extent, I don't know if you looked at it or not, but considering, I know you wouldn't want people driving into the back section where they used to store cars and used to work at them, but certainly you could use those for your employees to actually park to allow you some additional.
Well, they're going to close off that garage door.
They're closing the door totally?
Yeah, so you're not going to have access to it with a car. The only access you'll have is on that right-hand side against the
Okay.
fire department for deliveries and things.
The
like that.
loading zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Loading zone, yeah.
Because you did have a big area in there that could actually have been available.
On the parking front too, I was wondering too, obviously there are 16 proposed spaces and looking at 8 employees, and so does that cut down on the number of usable parking spaces if you're having potentially 8 employee vehicles there? So does that cut down to only 8 parking spots for customers? And do we have a
Based off
concern
of
there?
floor- Is it
Yeah,
based off
that's
of floor
not-
traffic?
Yeah,
floor,
that- yeah,
Right, so there was
ours
still,
That's not.
They fill that out.
Okay.
That doesn't affect our calculation. Our calculation is based off of the square footage.
okay, so they'll meet that?
Which
Yeah, there's
includes both.
32, when you look at the floor
Yeah,
plan.
okay.
There's 3,200 square feet of area that's accessible to the public. You know, the walk-in cooler.
Correct.
Or the restrooms.
Yeah,
Or
it's-
the break room. Those things don't generate traffic. The
Right.
area accessible to the public generates traffic.
Correct, the front
And
half.
As it turns out, the 3,200 square feet that's accessible, when you do the calcs, comes up with 16, so it happened to match. There had been other uses in the past proposed that didn't come out that well, but this does.
So the 3,200 square feet requires 16 spaces?
Right.
But is that customers?
total.
That's total, it doesn't matter customer to
Our
employee,
bylaws
okay.
totally
The
All right,
bylaws.
doesn't-
fair enough.
Outside
Yep.
of, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure and be clear on
There
that.
there are a
Yep.
few,
In-
there are a few uses where the number of employees is factored in, but this is
Industrial
not
or
one of
industrial,
them.
Right. Yep,
manufacturing or
okay.
something like that, yeah. So
Just fine on that.
that
Just a-
part should be okay.
Just a quick question, does street parking take an effect as well? Because I know that there is street parking, but is that not?
No, it doesn't.
that-
Not for, but,
It doesn't count for zoning purposes, yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, certainly as they're available, they're free to use,
Yeah,
but
right.
they're not part of, because you can't guarantee that space is going to be available to your usage at any particular point in time.
And he is cleaning up the front
Yep.
and, you know, restoring the curb line, so, because that's a bad, you know, it's a tight area, bad intersection as far as, you know, line of sight and traffic going through there, and then especially with the fire station there as well. So it's good to get rid of the parking that had nosed up over the sidewalk into the building, so.
Weeds growing.
And I think, no, architecturally, I think it's going to be great, as Larry just mentioned, it definitely is going to spruce up the area. My only other question was.
Is that a pun?
On the, what's that?
Spruce up
Spruce up
Spruce Street?
Spruce Street, yeah, I didn't even catch that. And you had just mentioned it, that the rear doors, so they're going to close that whole rear section off, and does that need any type of egress? I know that there is some new egress doors more towards the front and middle of the building, and I don't know if that's something that we just, that the fire department would have their call on, or the building commissioner, but I just look at this whole back half of the building, and there's no egress, and they've closed off all the other, any type of egress as far as they removed all the window assemblies, right? So that was my only other question from a
Well,
building
there-
and planning standpoint.
Their architect stamped it. So I'm assuming that based on the use class in the building code, and given the location of all the other egress, all the other entrances,
Well,
that closing it off.
We could certainly have John, just have.
I can mention it.
Yeah,
We can
just,
mention it, yep.
Yeah, it's not,
I mean, as
it's not
again,
something that gets into planning,
Okay.
not a,
yeah, he shouldn't issue a building permit unless those calculations are given. And I believe it's probably the distance to the exit based on.
Right.
So that's something that they should provide to him as part of the building permit application. But that's fine, we can do, I don't think we're going to approve it tonight. I just want to get the questions
Right,
out
get the
so that
questions
way
out
we
there.
can.
Yep.
So-
Well, to some degree, the last sentence of my report includes the caveat of if there is an emergency, or if there is a door on the north end of the building, which there had been, that'd be an emergency exit only, because the town's parking lot's there, the parking lot for the youth center is there, and the prior use had wanted to use that for public parking, and it's not a public parking lot. It's a parking lot for the youth center, and in fact, some of the firefighters park there as well. So it's not a parking lot open to the general public, per se. So it's not going to count as parking for this business, and we don't want to encourage people using these other businesses to park back there in the town lot. So are they going to be able to, are your guys going to be able to address the rest of the comments by the 12th of next month? That's our
I
next
think
meeting.
he'd indicated that most of them were done already,
we're dealing
just
with- yeah.
Liz hadn't looked at them, so I would think they should be able
Yeah,
to.
I would say the lighting and
Says that's already available, so.
the lighting is really the only outstanding. You know, the utility ones, I think you should look at them before you go to construction, because otherwise you're going to have issues, but they're not.
I'd like to know what the coordination, certainly the coordination with the fire department in terms of closing off the street is something that I would at least like to know and make sure that it's covered in here, and that
Okay.
the fire department's comfortable with that. I mean, I don't think it's insurmountable, but they do need to know that, you know, if you're closing off a section of Spruce Street, that they either can get by, or that they have to know that, you know, your contractor is going to tell them, and on those days, they'll have to go up Main Street and then back around the other way, which isn't the end of the world. It's not that much further. But at least that you've had conversations with them and they're aware of it.
So just get a traffic plan with the fire department, they provide that?
No, they would not provide that. You're going to have to provide that. You're going to have to, I mean, I think you need to go and talk to them and say, okay, what do you guys want to do? You may also need to do a traffic plan, though, if you're going to close. I mean, that was a comment that the fire department, it's going to be an issue. It's also an issue with the people of the town of Milford. If you need to close off Spruce Street, we need to know that, and then we need to at least have some level of a traffic plan that says, if you have to close off Spruce Street totally or in one direction, what are you going to do with the traffic? What's at least to a basic level? I don't think we need to have a full signing plan, but at least a basic level of what are you going to do with the traffic? You know, where are you going to notify them, and things like that.
You can have them give me a call if there's a question of how much they want it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I've done full traffic plans. I don't think we need to see that. but certainly, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, there's a.
And it's,
You know, do you plan on taking the traffic up to the intersection, you know, at the next intersection at the lights and have everybody turn right?
Right.
You know, or are you going to give them notice beforehand so that some people could actually take the Pearl Street? Any of those things are up, you know, when you do close that street, it is highly used, so thought process in where you notify people could be extremely important. Again, it's also part of, you need the contractor to look at it and say, you know, I can close it for 4 hours, and I'm only going to close it between 10 and 2, in which case it's not as big a deal. If you're doing it during school time, and if you think you need to close it while Stacy is in session, that's a whole different ballgame, and we need to know that, because then you need to coordinate it with the school buses and the school to make sure that they're aware of it and what's going to happen. I don't know that you do need to do that or not. I'm just saying that's what we need to be comfortable with, that you know whether you do or not.
Sounds good.
I know the school department would be
Extremely interested in finding out.
interested in finding that out, especially if buses need to get detoured. So,
Yeah.
So you still want to continue it, though?
I think I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see it any different than the other one that we continue to the next meeting. I'm comfortable that we can put it on for the next meeting. If it turns out that they're not completed, then we'll deal with it at that time. But, and the thing is, just so you know, in almost all cases, this board is pretty consistent with, you've heard our issues. It's not like we're going to come up with a whole new one on the 12th. If you address the issues that you've heard today, then it would get approved. So that's normally, we don't close the hearings or don't stop them, but those are the issues that we have.
Okay, not a problem.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to continue to 12/12. Gee, I can remember a date.
Yeah, so I'll make the motion to continue the amended site plan for 13 Spruce Street till 12/12.
Motion by Chris to continue the hearing till 12/12.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous at 3. So we'll see you back on 12/12. Like I said, you address those, and certainly have your engineer reach out to Liz, making sure that everything is all set, and it should go pretty smoothly.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Amended site plan for 100 Central Street. The applicant requests amended site plan approval to authorize a change of use on the subject property. The site is the former catering business located on the northwest corner of Central Street and Bragg Slip. In 2020, the planning board approved a change of use for the second floor of the building to office and warehouse space for an energy consulting auditing firm that periodically conducts contractor training sessions. Occupancy of the basement and first floor of the building were then only vaguely noted as warehouse and office warehouse, respectively, on the floor plans. The current proposal is to add a church use on the first floor. The floor area to be converted to church use indicates 1,416 square feet of floor area for assembly area. This requires 17 off-street parking spaces for that area alone, not considering the other uses in the building. There are only 11 total spaces provided on the site. I recommend the proposal be revised to comply with the parking requirements of the zoning bylaw. Fire department did send a letter. Amended site plan for 100 Central Street was reviewed, and I have recommendations for parking spaces 10 and 11. This makes it even worse. On November 15th, 2023, I observed the site to verify the gas meter was still protected and the fire department connection was accessible. The amended plan shows handicap parking space number 10 and parking space number 11. It appears the plan shows these two spaces relocated closer to the sidewalk on Central Street. This relocation will obstruct the fire department connection because a parking vehicle in space number 11 would block it. The connection is also prone to damage from vehicles and snow removal because it is located close to the paved surface. I recommend eliminating space 11 if possible. If not possible due to the required parking spaces, shift space 11 more west. If this is not possible, keep parking spaces 10 and 11 oriented forward. A bollard similar to the type used for gas meter protection should be added immediately south of the fire department connection. Water department sees no conflict. Did I miss a letter this time? Did I get them all?
No, they didn't get them. That's all we got. And of course, the applicant didn't bother to show up or make an effort to address any of this.
Yeah. Comments, questions from the board?
I mean, technically, from a zoning standpoint, I don't see how you can approve it because it
Right.
doesn't comply. He would need to get a variance from the ZBA for off-street parking. And I don't see how you could put that kind of a use in the building.
I mean, I almost, based on that usage and based on the other usage, if he met if he met one of the parking spaces or the other, you could say that they never overlap each other.
Right.
But considering he doesn't meet either, he only meets one,
Yeah,
I
you can't even do
I
one.
can't say that for the church. It just isn't
Yeah.
there. So I agree with you that there's no way that, I could see someone saying, I want a variance to allow us to do this because the church only meets on nights and on weekends, and the other businesses are Monday to Friday,
Yeah.
8 to 4, but that's,
Yeah, I
still
thought he was
doesn't have
going to
enough
be
room
here.
for the
so-
church.
I thought he was going to show up, so, I mean, you could continue it, and then if he wants to do anything with it, he can come back on the 12th and address it. Otherwise, that'll give him a chance to withdraw without prejudice.
Yep. Yeah, I don't have an issue with doing that. I mean, we certainly could disapprove it now, but I would at least give him the chance to
Right.
do it on his own accord as to how he wished, but it's the pleasure of the board.
Yes, one quick question. So the proposed current use to be a church, that is okay as far as that meets the criteria, but the criteria from the parking spaces with that usage is where we have.
The church use is allowed in the
that-
zoning.
right, in that
The
zoning. Yep.
parking does,
But the parking,
Yeah, with
the
that
available
size
parking
church.
does not
Correct.
accommodate for that usage. Okay.
That
Yeah, just
size
wanted to make
church.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
the
Right.
problem that we have, and what I just mentioned, we don't have a mechanism. I mean, I guess the only mechanism is to ask for a variance for even the parking.
Right. But that's not
We don't
gonna-
have a mechanism. There is a mechanism where if you have multiple usages on a site, you can reduce the amount of parking by a certain percentage, or you can request that the parking is reduced by a certain percentage.
Special permit from
By
this
special
board.
permit from us.
Okay.
But that being said, there's nothing that when you don't meet it at all, that becomes a problem.
Understandable. All right, thank you.
And that device, so to speak, was really designed for plazas.
Yeah.
Where like, well, the Coles Plaza, for example, they have a special permit for that, so.
I mean, you know, in this, again, in this particular case with this particular use, you know, it would be appropriate to me to entertain a thing where you say these parkings don't overlap. But that being said, you still need to meet the parking that's required for what you're trying to put in.
Yes, yeah, right off the bat.
Right.
So they would need to, obviously, there's no room for additional spaces, but they could cut back on the
Cut back
size of the church.
I just find that being problematic, because I don't know how you do that. I mean, it's great putting it in a plan, how do you keep people out of, you know, it's pretty tough to monitor that, shall we say?
Yeah.
So the pleasure of the board, we could either deny it at this point, or,
You, David?
Yeah, David.
Well, you're just in time. They're about ready to continue it. They read through my report. You don't have enough parking,
Okay.
so,
yeah, I don't know if you've seen town planner's comments, but there isn't enough parking for what you're proposing.
Yeah. The only thing I was going to say to that is the church, they actually just meet up the street already, their congregation. There's a building where there's like 4 churches in one, and they just like cycle through. And there's like, I don't know how they did it there, but there's like no parking almost there either.
well, that's in a zoning district that doesn't require off-street parking,
Yeah, okay.
but your zone does. The IA zone requires it.
Yeah.
And it'd be different if, and we were just talking about the idea of saying, well, all the other uses in the building are daytime uses. This church use would either be on off days or in the evenings, so the parking, the usage wouldn't overlap. But you don't have enough parking on the site, if there was nothing else on the site at all, other than this building, there's not enough
Other
parking
than the
to meet the church.
Yeah.
Given the size of the church, which is only a small portion of the building.
Yeah, what's the exact calculation again, like the?
Well, you need 17 spaces for the 14, 16, 1,400 you have, so.
Yeah, and we have like 12 or, yeah, I think it's.
Well, and I'm not sure
You
if
have
you
a
saw the
letter.
letters, yeah, I mean, we've got a letter from the fire department that is asking to, you know, move or change or
There's
one
a
of the
bollard in
spaces.
front of that. He doesn't know. There's a big bollard in front of the gas thing already. It's been there.
Well, the other one was in front of the fire department connection as well.
Yeah, they can switch there's only one handicap required, right? I think. So I think
Should be, yeah,
yeah, so I think they can switch the
So-
striping to the.
for the alley to be in
Yeah.
front of it.
The other thing too, that I actually do use sometimes, not right now, but if you look at the site plan, I own a swath of like land on the other side of that fence. And you can fit like 3 cars in a tandem space there. And I have access through that driveway in between the 2 buildings. So we can get some additional spaces there. And if you also just pull forward and do tandems, like next to the dumpster, you can easily fit like 4 cars there.
Well, why aren't you submitting decent site plans that show all that stuff?
Well-
We've gone around and around with this site now for several years. Every time you come back,
Well,
you
those aren't-
submit the same crummy
Yeah, but
plan,
those-
and you don't have spaces that are compliant with any dimensional requirement or access requirement. So if that's what the proposal is, have a real engineer draw one up.
Yeah, no,
Submit it.
these, because those spaces wouldn't be like compliant with the access.
Well,
correct?
there you go.
But I'm saying we can like create more spaces if it's just like, hey, we need 17 spots for people to park.
They need to be compliant with.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have, I mean, there's certain things we can do, there's certain things that we can't do.
Yeah.
You know, the requirements are pretty much the requirements, so I mean, we can't say, oh, well, you've got 11, that's okay. You need the spaces that we indicate by the bylaw.
And I don't think we allow tandem unless it's like a residential use.
Right,
No.
we don't. And I mean, if you showed them as tandem, you'd have to give us and how are you going to actually do that? And we might be able to, but again, I see that as somewhat
With the
problematic.
Right, because if you did it with like employee parking, that's fine,
Yeah, and I
but the
think we've done
church
that
isn't
once in
going
a
to
while.
have,
Employees.
Yeah, no, it's all after hours type.
So I mean, that's where we are. I mean, to be honest, where we were, you know, when you weren't here, we were looking at it as either continuing it to allow you to try to address the comments, which I have no idea how you can do, but that's certainly
Yeah,
your
I mean, that's
choice.
what I just wanted to have like a conversation with you guys, is like, you know, how do we make this space? I mean, we just keep getting shut down. You know, the thing's been vacant forever.
Well, you need to find different uses that fit in the building, that meet the requirements. And if you're close, where you'd be justified in seeking a variance, then you might even get a favorable recommendation out of this board to go to the ZBA. But it can't be some off-the-wall proposal. It's got to be a reasonable proposal. And so far, this ain't it.
Yeah. Like we said, right, you know, which we don't, you know, there's nothing that allows it straight out. We're even saying, hey, with the church use, we won't count the parking uses that you already have on the upper floors. We would send a recommendation, perhaps we would send a recommendation that said, don't count them the same. But when the use that you're trying to put in is 17 spaces, it's very difficult for us to say, you know, when you only have 11, and then we're talking about, you know, offsetting times, which at some point in time that may not be totally true. Somebody from upstairs may be there at night, the same night that there's a church. It just presents a problem. So, you know, we can only stick our neck out so far with certain things, and I don't think this use gets you there. I don't know how this board could approve or could even send, in this particular case, send to the zoning board. They're the one that would make the final decision, but send to the zoning board as to what the appropriate thing to do is. It's, you know, you're 6 spaces off.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
a
you're starting
relatively
with a
small
deficit.
use, so to think that we're not going to have 11 parking spots there to begin with makes it, you know, that you don't in fact need the 16. That number sounds to me like it might actually be a little bit low, but hey, that's what our zoning says, but you're going to be out parking on the street. I just get the feeling, but we have no control over that to get to that point, but to say, yeah, I'm comfortable that we can let even less, I mean, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, the parking ratios for a church or synagogue or a mosque is based on the area that the congregation assembles in. So it doesn't count any of the other areas, any of the hallways, any of the offices, any of the smaller meeting rooms. It's the it's the sanctuary area. So that's the only floor area that's getting put in the mix to calculate parking. So it's already a dramatically different approach to calculating parking to begin with. And beyond that, as Joe just said, you're starting with a deficit. Just to start the conversation, you're already short 6 spaces. And then that doesn't even address whether anybody else is in the building at all. So I don't see how the board they can't approve it.
How many square feet?
Well, we're not going to design it for you. You need to figure it out and go to the ZBA potentially and request a variance. Because otherwise, the board's going to be forced to deny it, which would seem unfortunate if you have an
The
opportunity
ratio,
to figure it
right?
out.
I mean, I could,
you can look at it on the zoning, the zoning bylaw has the
I just
parking.
can't remember
And you
that.
can actually see which ones are lower.
is it like 1 per 100 then?
I don't know,
I think
I don't
so.
know them off the top of my head, but each use is different. So if you look at that and find the one that's the
it was
lowest
17
generator, if you find the one that's the lowest generator, that's the kind of use that'll work for you.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, this makes it very difficult, but that building was built long before we had zoning. And the fact is, it doesn't come anywhere close to providing for what we would now consider. So you put a use in there, you use up all your parking. And if you put, you may find a use that's there, but you've used up most of your parking with what you're using now, what you have in there now. That's just the way things are. You put in another use, like I said, we were looking at it as, okay, maybe we can justify a church being at night, only on the weekend. Maybe we could send a recommendation that if you ask for a variance. But if you put another use in, you're going to end up having to count the parking that you're already using for the use that's in there now. And so I can't tell you where to go or not go, but it's a fact of life that you're in a zone where you're required to have parking. You just don't have that much land on that spot, and I can't tell you what to do with it or not.
Yeah,
but
so if it's
that's where you are.
So the question, I guess the last question, I don't want to take a lot of your time, is just, so and this is a very small church, so if I just say, guys, we've got to cut down the sanctuary size to 1,000 square feet, which would hit us at least with the parking spaces we have, and saying, okay, this is what we've got. Is
You'd
that
have to show us how you cut down that area to that point, and you would have to send that, it would have to go to the zoning board of appeals for a variance. Because as I said, right now,
Yeah.
you'd have to count the uses that you have plus the church. So you're asking for a variance because you believe that they shouldn't overlap.
And I go there
Whether that's
first.
acceptable or not, I can't tell you because they're going to make the final decision. We've talked about that as being a possible solution. We haven't taken a vote, and I don't know how far down the path we've actually gone, but at least it makes some semblance of sense if you're able to do that. But I don't know that you can cut a sanctuary area to actually look that way or not. You have to look at that.
Well, by the time you put that little break room area in there,
Well, the planning board isn't going to design a damn thing
No, I
at a
understand
meeting,
that.
but that's what you're trying to get them to do. And I've told you multiple times when you come in and you don't like to hear the answer, is that you need to figure it out. And if you need to try and look at a site plan and work out different scenarios, that's what staff's for. You don't come to a public meeting and waste their time when you have no clue as to what you're doing. So my suggestion would be withdraw without prejudice and go figure it out and come up potentially with a logical variance request, because that's got to come back.
that's
to
what it
your-
would be. I mean, I already know, by the time you cut off the overhead door, you put the break room in there, that's room in the back, that area in the back is there's the stairs, cut that off into storage, you have less than 1,000 square
Well,
foot
that may be a
sanctuary.
possibility, but we don't.
And then it still requires a variance, not
Right.
by this board, but by the ZBA.
Yeah, so go there and then come here. But once again, I'm not asking you to design it, but I'm saying if I go through all these hoops, am I going to sit here in 3 months and you just say no?
I can't tell you that because again, as we just said, we're not the board that makes that decision.
But it will come, that application to the ZBA
Yeah.
will come here for a referral, and they'll submit a recommendation. And then it goes to the ZBA for the decision, and if the ZBA grants something, then you'll be back here with whatever that ratio is for an amended site plan. But that's the process you need to go through. They're not going to sit here and design it for you. You're going to need to hire an engineer or hire your architect and figure it out and go through the
It's really
process.
about the ZBA giving the variance
Well, yeah, the
because
ZBA, and you've got to have a story. You've got to tell them why, because you don't meet the parking requirements.
Right.
So you're going to have to tell them why you need a variance from that parking requirement,
and then once they give
why it
you
makes some
the,
semblance of sense.
if they gave him the variance, then he's showing a site plan that complies with it. So
Right.
there's,
Well,
Yeah.
he would have to show a site plan based on.
no,
whatever
I
he
understand.
got.
I'm
Yeah,
just
but there's
saying
very
it's
little
not
when it
like,
comes back to us.
exactly, there's not much,
Right.
Yes. Other
not much
than-
left up in the air is my only point. It's really about the ZBA.
Yep.
Sounds good. I appreciate your guys' time.
So, well, my suggestion
I
would be
would-
request to withdraw without
Make
prejudice.
a request to withdraw
and
without
then-
prejudice so that you can
and that just
resubmit.
wipes the slate clean and figure out what to do.
Because you can't go, we can't,
They're either going to deny it or you can withdraw it.
right.
Yeah, so, and I do that right now?
Yes.
I would suggest that.
Okay. Let's withdraw without prejudice.
Motion to accept the request for withdrawal without prejudice. Do I have a motion?
I'll accept that
Motion by Chris,
Yep.
second?
Second.
By Joe.
One quick discussion,
Yep.
is just to the applicant, just note that, the fire department's letter, just in spaces 10 and 11, in particular space 11, and, just looking that there is a fire connection right by space 11, so just take that into consideration on any future plans.
Yeah, I would, as Liz said, whether you're doing the ZBA application or the site plan or whatever, is to coordinate with staff prior to making that submittal so that they, based on the conversation that we've had here, they can at least help hopefully guide you a little bit in terms of making that application. Like I said, that it's going to be the zoning board's final decision, not ours at the end of the day, but at least, addressing those comments that have already come up would be advantageous to yourself.
Yeah, but I do want to say, for the record, we discussed parking. Larry, you told me to talk to the building department. John Erickson was like, what do you want me to do? I don't even know what you're talking about. And,
Well, I suggested you talk to the building official
Yeah.
because it's a change of use under his code to put place of public assembly on that floor of that building.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to, steer you in a direction to try to get some information as to whether it's even going to be doable or not. Or if it's doable, is it, too expensive to do, to meet his code? So that had nothing to do with zoning.
not that I'm not trying to do due diligence here, like, I reached out to John immediately after we spoke and had no response for 2 weeks, submitted some information he asked, and then no response for like
So
all this week.
typically for a site plan, you would hire an engineer. And in particular, if you're going to ZBA, it's probably wise to have an attorney in a case
Yeah.
like this as well. So these are the kinds of things that you should have in order, an engineer could have looked at this before you had even talked to Larry and said, you're not even close on the parking.
Right.
So that's the kind of due diligence that I think they're looking for you to take is hiring an engineer, or possibly, like I said, a lawyer if you're going to be going to ZBA. Because they can provide you the guidance that you're sort of asking us to look for, or give you.
Okay.
Did you vote?
Nope.
Did not vote.
All those in favor of granting the removal without prejudice, will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous at 3. Yeah, I would suggest that you look into any and all those things. As it gets into zoning issues and usages before or after, what you can or can't do, those get into legal issues that not even this board is necessarily part of. I mean, a lot of times we'll go to town council when it gets into things like that. So we're threading on stuff that's even somewhat difficult for this board to give comments to when we receive a plan that doesn't meet the requirements of what the zoning bylaw states. When we get into those other areas, they become gray and they become somewhat of a legal issue at certain times. And so depending on what you submit could affect how this board reacts to that submittal. So that's why it's also tough for us to just say, yeah, that's what would happen or not, because it really, a lot of it comes down to that. So it's a, obviously it's your choice as to how you do things, but you need to be cognizant of that.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep. Thank you. ZBA variance special permit referral for 24 Camp Street. Isabella Braga. Have that? Yep. Applicant is seeking a variance and/or special permit to construct a 24-by-24 attached garage on the subject property. The variance is sought from the side yard requirements to allow for the proposed attached garage to be within 11.1 of the side west property line, 20 foot required. The lot is non-conforming as to area and consists of a single-family dwelling located on an 18,408 square foot lot within the RC zone. The lot was originally created as part of the former Green Acres subdivision from the late 1970s, hence the rounding configuration on the westerly property line The subdivision was not completed, and the balance of the original tract, the adjacent 25-acre parcel, was acquired by New England Power. The lot is only 100 feet wide, and while the dwelling is oriented square to the front property line, the side property lines are not perpendicular to the front. Had the side lines been closer to the perpendicular with the street, a smaller variance would have been required. Therefore, I recommend a favorable report to the ZBA.
Yeah, the last page is the aerial of the entire area that shows most of the old subdivision tract, but that's all power company land now. And the next to the last page shows the tight configuration they're stuck with, trying to put the two-car garage addition on the west side of the building. So they had applied to the ZBA, and we got it in our mix, but the ZBA granted the variance for it at their last meeting in spite of not having a referral. And they had a bunch of questions and concerns that the applicant's going to be able to meet, but they did want to have something from the planning board, so when I
Oh, this
talked
is across
to...
from Esther.
Yeah, so when I talked to Jerry, Jerry Moody, he just suggested we review it as if it hadn't gone, and because from my standpoint, my report was going to say what it says now anyway. So I'd recommend a favorable report.
So that rounding in the street are actually just part of a larger parcel now that's never going to be developed.
Correct. Yeah, what did I say? It was Green Acres sub.
Yeah, I don't remember
And it
that.
was in an RB zone back then, which accounts for the size of the lot.
Yeah, for some reason I never realized that was what it was called. I mean, most of that is wet anyways.
Yep. Yeah, so I'd,
Pleasure of the board.
Yeah, I guess a couple questions, just because it was nice to be able to see or hear about the ZBA's stipulations. And I don't know if that's anything that we would want to take into account too, as far as making sure that things moving forward. I think one of the major ones was the grade at the back of the garage, being that a steep grade, and they were concerned with that steep grade, whether or not a retaining wall or even if a structural engineer had to look at that. So if that's something that we feel this board would need to consider before, or as part of our
no, this is
consideration.
No,
That's all.
residential
Okay.
property.
It's not,
so-
it's not an issue.
Okay.
If there was a wall required, if it's over 4 feet, it would have to be a stamped drawing, you know.
Correct.
Well, in the building
It doesn't-
official,
But that's a building issue.
There's no, it's an I don't even understand the comment.
The ZBA was concerned at the backside of the garage that the grading coming off of the foundation would be concerning to the structural integrity and holding that wall in place.
No.
From what I heard. Okay.
they were...
As a matter of fact, if there was a grading issue,
Yep.
if there was a grading issue with that, the wall that they poured to pour that would end up being the retaining wall.
Exactly. And I just want to bring those concerns up that the ZBA had, just to make sure that it was nothing that we should consider. I know that they also had talked about, obviously, the driveway goes from one side of the house to the other due to the garage structure. So just removing that existing driveway in order before the occupancy permit,
Yep, that's already part of their decision.
Yep,
so.
exactly. So if all that's part of their decision.
If you wanted to,
Yep.
you could say that as part of our,
It would
again, this is
have-
going to the
ZBA
ZBA
back
for them
to-
to make a
yeah.
decision. So
Yep.
we already know they
Right.
already did it, so
Right.
it's a sort of a
We don't have.
fait accompli.
Yeah, all we typically do in this situation is
Right.
make a recommendation to the ZBA.
favorable and favorable. Right, exactly.
Right, but
Yep.
you can say favorable with the following
These
conditions, but
conditions,
in
yeah.
this case, they've already done it, so.
Yeah, and in checking with Jerry
Okay.
Moody,
irrelevant.
who tracks their cases for town council, his recommendation is to do what we're doing. It's just
Okay.
do a referral. They've already got a bunch of conditions and all of that
Correct.
stuff. None of that's in our bailiwick anyway.
Okay.
I don't know why they were getting so off the track on it.
That's-
They did, so. So that was my recommendation, just send a favorable, that'll go back and that should close it out.
Yeah, Larry's worked with the applicant on this to really get this to, I think he really flushed out all the important stuff, so I think you guys are good to go.
Okay.
Joe, you got anything?
No.
Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Or send it favorable to the ZBA?
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Joe, seconded by Chris, to send it favorable to the ZBA. Any further discussion? Hearing not. All those in favor of sending it favorable signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous at 3.
Right.
Larry, you can...
I'll send him a
Yep,
letter.
you're welcome. Yeah, same to
You
you.
too.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Frederick.
Larry, you can talk about the post office.
Oh, do I have to? The post office sent all this stuff over. They wanted to make sure the board saw it. There's not a lot necessarily you can do about it, because typically these kinds of situations, for things that the board sees, would come in for subdivisions.
And then
This comes into play more with 40Bs for ZBA. So the ZBA developers, or I mean, the 40B developers are already aware of all this stuff anyway. But
Oh, these are for usage for mass mailing locations where
Right.
people have to go
Yes.
pick up.
They're actually, they're supposed to, I had seen this, just any subdivision is really supposed to be done this way.
right.
That's
Oh, the new
their.
thing with them, that's what
their
they're-
preference,
Yeah.
yeah. So when we are reviewing a subdivision plan, that's what we should be looking for, so that they have an appropriate area
Right.
Right.
that would house all those mailboxes.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Prices keep going up, service keeps going down.
That's right.
It's snail mail anyway.
So anyways, that's that. So going forward, I guess we're all aware of that.
Yep.
I'm sure staff will keep it on file so we know what can be used.
At some point, we make some revisions to the subdivision plans. We should probably just put something.
Yeah, we should make a reference to this, whatever the standard is for the United States Postal Service type thing, not actually putting any of it in, but
Yeah,
just saying
exactly.
whatever the latest is.
Right.
They have to provide mailbox locations as required by the USPS.
Correct.
Comprehensive Plan Subcommittee. What do you want to talk about on that one, Larry?
Well, we're coming close to getting a contract, the form of the contract approved. The legal department has it, and what they've seen initially seemed to be okay. So we're moving forward in terms of the form of a contract. I don't know, probably after Thanksgiving, we'll hear back from MAPC about the scope of services, because we recommended some tweaks to that we should be seeing soon. So that's attachment A, basically, to the contract. So we're closing it in on being able to sign a contract and get started on the planning process. And one of the things that we had done in the 2003 comprehensive plan, and I'd recommend we do again, and the consultants are as well, is to have a subcommittee that can meet, if necessary, outside of your regular meeting times and dates, depending on what the purpose would be. So this is the makeup of the subcommittee we used in 2003, and it seemed to work well. I think Joe was one of the planning board members back then. So one select board member, one FinCom member, one CONCOM member, the town administrator, and then basically you three guys, literally you three guys, would be on the subcommittee. So other towns call it a steering committee, but I don't know that that's quite as accurate as just being a subcommittee. But to the extent that there would be meetings necessary so that there is some kind of an official forum, so to speak, of the planning board without actually having to have the full planning board meet, the subcommittee could fill that role. And in theory, there could be meetings that none of you guys were at, as long as we had the other 3 or 4 people, or maybe only one of you and the rest of the crew. So this is a way to, build some flexibility into.
And my recollection was there wasn't that many that
No.
we had, that, so if anybody's thinking that this is a huge commitment that we're going to have to make, that wasn't the case the last
Right.
time around.
Right.
My only recommendation would be to change it to conservation member or agent or something of that sort, because I would imagine Bob Buckley was probably on back then, and so
I don't remember. I'd have to go back and see who it was, but,
I don't see any of the current conservation
well,
member. I'm just,
Joe Zakili was interested. I talked to him.
oh,
about it.
you did?
Yeah, so that's why I stuck with my guns. No,
Yeah, I mean,
This
well-
worked well the last time.
I mean, I don't, the purpose for this to me, doesn't lead to a non-town, non-resident
Right.
type thing. I mean, it should be a conservation member, somebody that lives in town, because it's not going to be a technical issue. It's more of again, we got into land transfers, going to the Conservation Commission, those types of things. That board, we need to have them on board that, yes, they in fact wanted that, those types of things. So I think you need a member, and they need to find somebody that's going to want to contribute.
Yeah.
It should be important as part of the process. So I understand where you're going, but I think it's also important that we find somebody, and whether that,
Yeah.
to me, that rests along, to a certain extent, to the Board of Selectmen in terms of who they appoint and not appoint. This is an important thing for the town of Milford, and they need, and it's certainly an important thing for the Conservation Committee as a whole to get on board with, and they should have a member there that wants to at least do that, and
Yeah,
I
Joe
agree with you,
No,
yeah.
and John's on now, and so, and we have there's another new member, so
Yep.
Jeff, so I just,
Yeah, I mean, the
Last
only,
time for FinCom, it was Tom, so, and he's still on, so he may want to.
yeah, I mean, the only person that's actually not a resident, that could possibly be a non-resident of Milford would be the town administrator. He happens to be one, but.
Well, yeah, for now,
But I
covered.
understand the need for him to be on there outside of that, but that's probably the only person that I would recommend, that position being the only
Right.
person
Yeah.
that is a non-resident of town of Milford.
So my thought was that it would be helpful to have this, and like you say, Joe, they're not going to necessarily be meeting, multiple times, but to the extent that they're needed, it's there. But my thought was we'd be able to send a memo to these boards to start thinking about it.
Yes.
Given the timing that
Yep.
we're in, trying to get the contract and the scope and all that stuff
Yep.
tied down, then that would all come together roughly at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, I have no problem with
Right.
sending out
Yeah.
a letter to the
Yeah.
each of the boards so that they're aware. I mean, I can't imagine that this is going to start in earnest until into the new year.
Yeah, probably not. So, yeah, that'll give them time to think about it.
Yep.
All right.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Geez, we had a long one today. I couldn't get open.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Chris to adjourn, second by Joe. God, see, it didn't take you long to second that. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous of 3. Chris, thank you and good night.